Namaste, good morning. I welcome you all to the next, to a new edition of the SPMRF Dialogue. We have with us today Dr. Al Balasubramaniam ji. I welcome
Namaste.
you,
Thank you.
Namaste, and a formidable thinker, an author, and uh, a fundamental chronicler, one can say, of the policy evolution of independent India. I believe very few people have done the kind of work that Dr. R. Balasubramaniam is doing. And I would just like to briefly introduce him. He is a widely respected development activist. I have known him for years, and he has inspired an entire generation to take to policy analysis, policy work, activism, development work. He is a leadership trainer, thinker, and author. And more importantly for us, he is the founder of Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement and grassroots research and advocacy movement. And he embodies a rare blend of grassroots and macro perspectives along with policy drawn from his multifaceted experience spanning nearly 4 decades. And what you bring along is that you have been exposed to the leading universities in the world. So you are well entrenched in the academia. You are well versed with the latest academic lingo, the latest policy lingo, and your wide exposure to this entire world is, I think, what makes your work stand out and stand apart.
Thank you.
And for our friends who have joined Dr. Balasubramaniam ji, I would like to let all of you know, and I'm sure you know, that he's currently the serving member at the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India. And he has authored 9 books in Kannada and English, 3 of them, The Citizens, Voices from the Grassroots, and Leadership Lessons from Daily Living, have acquired a global acclaim. But friends, today, we being extremely delighted to have him here, our intention is to discuss this book. It has become a bestseller, one of its kind book, which has appeared in the last decade, a book which is not a hagiography, a book which is not hurriedly written, which is not theoretical only, but which combines pragmatism, deep insight, incisive analysis, and articulation that are thought-provoking and inspiring as well. Power within the leadership legacy of Narendra Modi. So at the outset, I really want to thank you for writing this book.
Thank you.
Because I think this was long in coming.
In a sense, yes. It took a long while to just to give a background of a lot of people ask you why this book, why now, and why on leadership specifically. I think no, we're just starting the conversation, but maybe I'll explain that.
Yes.
That can sort of lay the foundation for it.
That will be very interesting.
For me, having lived and worked with indigenous tribal communities, it was the failure of the state that was visible to me. The state which neglected its forest dwelling citizens, which made me feel very angry at the system. So I was suing the state and being outside the government. And I realized, why aren't these people understanding how do you take care of these marginalized communities? In search of an answer, I thought maybe more degrees will help me, and went to Harvard and other places. Realized that I initially thought policy making was the problem. Then it struck me, it's not the policy making alone, the policy maker behind the policy making, the leadership of the policy maker. In our country, in the context of 40 years ago, I'm talking, I felt that was a vacuum, that was a problem. So I thought, let me understand leadership. So I did a fellowship on leadership at Harvard. And we also have this mistaken impression, including me, I had that mistaken impression that you can learn a lot of leadership in a place like Harvard. Sometime down the line, as part of my fellowship and research, I realized that they have a lot of things they have discovered, but they didn't have answers to the questions I was wrestling with. So I learned a lot, but I didn't learn what I wanted to learn. So I came back a little disappointed, and then it struck me that what India had to offer was far deeper, but my journey to understanding Bharat had not started. So this missing link and the search and the hunger for understanding what is the civilizational wisdom of my own country, and can I get into it? Instead of going outside and trying to understand it from a framework which is possibly aligned to their cultural patterns, I thought let me understand culture from Indian context. So I started off very, very simplistically. I reread the Jataka tales, not merely as a young child reading a Amar Chitrakatha comic, but something deeper. I went into Panchatantra. Why is it called Panch, and what's the Tantra there? What are the philosophical underpinnings of this wonderful way of explaining it to people? And I started getting deeper and deeper and getting excited. And I was privileged to have my gurus who were able to guide me. And my Diksha guru used to teach me Shankara's works, Atma Bodha, Viveka Chudamani, Drigdrishya Viveka, and all of that used to be from a spiritual construct or context.
You had a very solid grounding, because that is evident in your book as well. I mean, otherwise, I personally, I was very attracted to your this section, personal facets of leadership, leading with the soul, the intersection of leadership and spiritual growth. I mean, I think no book really looks at Narendra Modi's leadership
From that angle at
from
all.
that angle at all. So please, I'm sorry, I was, because that point,
you're absolutely right.
you have that grounding.
Luckily, I had that grounding. I put it that way. It is just, it was not, I don't think it was designed to write a book at that stage. It was more to understand myself and try to evolve. So I hadn't even connected that to leadership at the point of time. So when I started getting into these stories, and then I got into Bhagavad Gita, some other Upanishads, even works of Ramana Maharshi or Aurobindo, I started using a different lens of analyzing. So I realized that the power of the messages in these books, though we treat them as 50 सात साल के बाद पढ़ना चाहिए, and we don't even take them as lived examples for our own life, but it struck me that there's such an enormous depth to what you can use for your everyday life itself. So I put it all together, went to my guru, he was a monk of the Ramakrishna order, and I told him, मैंने तो इतना सारा research कर दिया, बहुत सारा material था मेरे पास. Because I went as a researcher. See, the advantage of Western training is you have got framework, very good frameworks for research thinking.
Yes.
I'm not saying India doesn't have, but I used to thrive on that kind of framework.
Yes.
So I used that knowledge to look at our scriptures, different scriptures from a leadership lens. I never saw it from any other lens. And I went to my guru and told him, "Itna discover kar diya maine, but I don't think there's a person whom I can write about who manifests all this." So I said, "What's the point? My research is done, but I don't have anything to write about." And I was at that time in the forest. So Swami Sureshanji was his name. He explained to me and said, "Mujhe to aisa malum nahi hai. I don't know all this. You ask me about Advaita, I'll explain to you. You ask me about Shankara, I can tell you. But you ask me about leadership, it's not my area. You chose to do research from that angle. But I can only give you one piece of advice." He said, a young man had come to, one of my brother monks has told me this story. He was a very senior monk. Had come to Rajkot wanting to be a monk of the order, wanted to join as a brahmachari. He was turned away because he had not had a graduation degree at that time. And that person left disappointed, traveled 2-3 years, acquired a degree also, came back and told the Swamiji, "No, I'm ready." The Swamiji then told him, Atmasthanji was the name of the Rajkot Swamiji.
Yes.
Later on became the head of the Ramakrishna order.
Yes.
He told him, "Well, monkhood is not for you. You have something higher destined for your life." And so sent him away. So he said, "That man is today Chief Minister of Gujarat. Why don't you write about him?"
Wonderful.
So I said, "I'm in a forest in Karnataka. I don't even know, I only know of him. And he's so distant. He's a Chief Minister of a state somewhere else. I don't think I have access to him." So I was very disappointed. I said, "Idea is good, but I don't have access to him." So I forgot about it. But since I had done the research, see, any researcher would like to write about what he researched. So I just wrote another book called Leadership Lessons for Daily Living.
Yes. Yes.
And I forgot. I said, "Okay, there's some amount, I brought out a book." But 4 years ago, when the call came, asking me to join the commission, and at that time also, I had not internalized that this commission is a product of the visionary thinking of the Prime Minister himself, and that he is overseeing this commission, and we report to him. I thought something, this is up my sleeve, my competencies in public HR and policy and leadership, so this possibly I can contribute something to nation building in this form. I came to Delhi, and within a year of my working, and I realized that we report to him, we take directions from him, and his vision and his clarity of thought, I was impressed. Then after a year, I realized here is the person that fits so many of the theories I have discovered in our scriptures. So let me take the courage and ask him. At best, he'll say, no, don't write. So I spoke to a few close friends. I said, how can you go ask the Prime Minister, can I use you as a case study or a protagonist? I said, at worst, what will happen? He'll be unhappy with me.
Yes.
I'll take the risk. So I went and asked him. And like all people who have told me that Prime Minister may not like this, he was not very keen. He said, there's so many books about me. He said, लगभग 400 किताबें हैं, मोदी भक्त की किताबें हैं, मुझे और एक किताब नहीं चाहिए. So I was very disappointed. इतना रिसर्च तो कर लिया मैंने. Then I just told him, I said, 12-13 साल का रिसर्च है मेरे पास. I mean, मेरे guru also felt that way, and so I wanted. And then he agreed, and he said 3 conditions in it. It's very interesting, and people don't know the person actually, in my opinion. They see him only as a politician or as a prime minister, but the deep person that he is something to me. Because of writing this book, I had the privilege of being at a perch where I could engage, interact, watch him, talk to him on a one-to-one basis, and learn a lot from him. He told me the first condition he said was, a lot of people write this Modi book. Now I want this to be, you're an academic, you've done the research, it should be an academic
book. Exactly.
He said, एक किताब मेरे बारे नहीं होना चाहिए, एक किताब तो भारत का leadership के knowledge के बारे में होना चाहिए. You can use me as a case study, but I am not the book.
And it's evident in your pages.
Yes.
You have actually done that. You have done justice to that, that injunction.
That
concept. Yeah.
That condition he put. And the second condition he said, the whole world, he said, पूरे संसार सोचते हैं कि लीडरशिप बाहर से भारत पा रहा है, लेकिन इस किताब के माध्यम से ये संदेश जाना पड़ेगा कि लीडरशिप हमें बहुत ही मालूम है, सिविलाइजेशन नॉलेज के फाउंडेशन पर आधारित है, and we can tell the world, विश्व गुरु का लीडरशिप संदेश एक किताब के माध्यम से जाना.
Very interesting.
And that's why this book is a global edition.
Absolutely.
And all over the world it's available.
All over the world. I believe you have already spoken about it in Harvard and in other universities, leading universities.
UK,
in the US,
Japan.
UK. Yes, even Japan. Last time I spoke to you, you were traveling to Japan.
So,
and so how was it, how do you see in the global
for the whole
policy,
world, two things I see. One is they are really impressed with the Honorable Prime Minister's leadership. They cannot believe that somebody with the kind of background and origin. See, we should see this in perspective. Negotiating politics anywhere in the world, and more so in India, in a diverse country like ours, the complexity of politics, federalism being very complex in our country, opportunities for a chief minister to become a prime minister and from a mainstream party, and for an ordinary tea seller on a railway station platform to rise to the highest office of the land.
Absolutely.
And provide global leadership today, not just national leadership. Leading our country is one thing, but being looked up to by a lot of nations to provide the leadership. The people are curious, how did this man get there? How is it even possible? Are there lessons for us? So wherever I speak, he's an object of study. And this book, interestingly, places him in that space where he can be studied. He needs to be studied, in my opinion. I believe that people should do doctorates about his leadership.
Exactly.
This book it's already kick-started. It became the course in several universities now. So the third condition he put was something, again, very fascinating. Only a person of his thinking can do that. He said, it can't just be a book. But the book, after being read, he said, देश के सेवा के लिए 1000 leaders निकलना पड़ेगा. Even there, it is a nation that he thinks about.
Fantastic. Means for reading this book has to inspire or push at least 1,000 youth.
At least 1,000 people.
At least 1,000 people
get into
mainstream leadership
for the nation.
And that was the third condition.
That is not in my hands. The first two were, and I think I've done it.
Yes, but this will act as a catalyst. It will act as a launch pad.
The third is for the readers to actually get inspired by his work and his life's work. So for me, it is an opportunity to explain a person. See, this is what we normally do as researchers, as academicians, as writers. We always say Mahabharata mein aise hua tha, Yudhishthira's leadership was like this, Bhishma was like this. We always talk about the past. So it's so unrelatable. Or we Indians put people on a pedestal. हम तो एक जयंती डिक्लेयर कर देते हैं उस दिन we put a garland on, distribute sweets, forget the message and then celebrate the messenger for a day and forget it.
And then forget.
So here is a life and flesh and blood example. A person who's negotiated all these difficulties and risen to the top. What greater role model can the people of today get, right? And so if we can just learn from him, and for me, I can personally, I can confess this. Whatever I have written is based on research and observation, and I can justify every word. My research notes is 50 pages. I'm not saying I live that. But today it's my Bible to try to live that, because there's so many things what I observed from him. Very small things it looks like, but deep leadership messages. If we can just imitate it, even if we are not able to appreciate the conviction behind it, even if we are able to only see the practice and imitate it, I think the nation will be better off.
You know, you are absolutely right. There are, in fact, while you were talking, I realized that your guru's words, it took 12 to 13 years, but they came finally to fruition. And it's so interesting that he suggested this to you in a forest there in Karnataka when you didn't even have, and you see how events turned through 12 to 13 years and brought you right at that point. So for us, I think for Indians, for us, this is a very...
It's destiny.
It's destiny. It's
so
destiny.
Preordained is the way I look at it.
Absolutely. It's preordained. Now, you know, especially over the last few days when I was again with Operation Sindoor and the manner in which Prime Minister led from front, his address to the nation on 12th, I think in the last few days, for about last 10 days, I was constantly referring actually to your book. And I think those who have questions on the latest, I mean, one can go back to 2014 when he took oath, when all leaders of the neighboring countries were invited for the first time. It never happened.
Look at the magnanimity of the thought.
So, you know, in the last one decade, every major development, every major initiative, every major turn, whether diplomatic, whether strategic, whether in terms of policy, I think the thinking behind, if we have to understand the thinking behind, Modi's thinking behind, one finds a lot of answers in your book. So, you know, it would be very interesting. For example, you speak extensively, you cover the COVID period. One. I have seen you so interestingly describe the concept of Jan Bhagidari. You describe that also. And you have covered a very crucial phase, and that is abrogation of 370.
The whole chapter.
There's a whole chapter on that. And I think, you know, there have been rims written on Antyodaya also.
Power behind the concept.
Power behind the concept. So can you please share with us, you know, that the main, the fundamental points that emerge when you look at the COVID period? Your book analyzes his leadership, then the abrogation of 370, then this entire concept, I don't like to call it a concept, but this entire hands-on dynamic vision of Jan Bhagidari, which is continuously insisted, spoken about, and then implemented. And then you also write about how the Modi that we see today, it's not that he wanted to be Prime Minister. And as you very rightly say, you know, that from his earliest days, his deepest desire was to lead India and help it realize its immense potential as a nation. So that was his core.
Even now, I think that's his core.
Even now that. And you write that, you know, for him, Prime Ministership
is a platform.
You write about that, you know, and it's a very interesting. And then you say that you know, this accumulated experience of 3 decades, you use the word jhola, going around at the grassroots, districts, you know, feeling and sensing across the country, it is the result of that condensed experience that we are seeing today. So without much, you know, going on and on, because I got very inspired.
There's so much to talk, actually.
So much to talk. So please, could you please take us through this?
Yeah, I'll possibly explain the book a bit and say in the context of the book how I put it.
Yes.
Okay. The book I describe in 4 sections. The first section is essentially talking about the leadership of India itself. इतना क्या special है भारत में? So it's very distinct. The Western world looks at a leader, whereas India we look at the expression of leadership. That's a beauty.
Beautiful. Very,
Right?
very,
And
really apt.
just take the Bhagavad Gita. If I can start from that. We talk about Krishna being the master, the guru, giving us the Gita. But just imagine, without the Arjuna, there is no Gita at all. We needed a man who's despondent. The Vishada of Arjuna was required. And and I'm explaining this because I see the Prime Minister and the role he plays. It's so beautifully captured by what I'm going to explain. Now, Krishna knows he's the Lord, but he doesn't play that role. He's very clear that roles matter. In leadership dharma is operating in the context in which you are placed. And that's why Prime Ministership is just one role for him. It's not a big title or a position. It's a role that has to be played. As a pracharak, it was a role to be played. But one consistent theme in each of these roles was Rashtra Seva.
Yes. Yes.
Niswartha Rashtra Seva.
Yes. Selfless national
Service. That's all. As simple as that. But the roles changed. Roles evolved. Roles could be a pracharak, a national organizing secretary of the party, chief minister of a state, and today prime minister of a country, and also a global leader in his. That also a role he's playing. Now, my way of looking at it was, Krishna understood that I'm a charioteer. I have to take Arjuna to the end of the beginning of the battlefield and position him there. Arjuna becomes despondent, which is also my job to reassure him. See, the speech you spoke of on May 12, it was so beautiful for me. I've analyzed his speeches in extensive depth in various places
Yes,
and heard it so many times in Man Ki Baat, etc. Each is a master class by itself, but I would rate his May 12th speech as the finest. It's just 30 minutes or so, the total speech, but the finest. Why do I say that? It embodies the entire construct of Bharata Muni's description in Natya Shastra. Now, I never really asked the Honorable Prime Minister whether he has read the Natya Shastra, whether he wants to live that, but he manifests the principles of Sadharanikaran, where India is it's a master of thinking in communication. The Western world, in which I have been trained in policy communication, other stuff, we talk about simple, the sender to the receiver, and then the medium carries the message, and there is noise in the environment. All of us have learned that. But India's the Indian civilization wisdom, Bharata talks about bhava, the rasa. He talks about it is not just the medium, but it is the saharidayata that has to be set up.
How do you translate that into English?
Where we are emotively connected.
Emotively connected.
And look at the speech of the Prime Minister. He emotively connected to every single citizen. I had a lot of my friends call me and say, I broke down when the Prime Minister was talking. Right. At the same time, they also told me I was very reassured. It's like Krishna there for Arjuna. No, we will be taken care of. Our nation will be taken care of. So he could communicate the appreciation of grief of the people who had suffered. 26 people did die of our citizens. Very painful deaths. It's very difficult to even relate to them. When you think of them, one of them was my student who took my class in leadership in Mysore. It's very personal for many of us. And he could communicate that too. It was personal to the Prime Minister. He could communicate grief, he could communicate anger, but he could communicate stability.
Yes.
He could communicate the future.
This is not going to be allowed. Reassurance.
And he could speak. He spoke to several audiences, not just to citizens. How many of us can even imagine that? International audience. He communicated that trade is not a negotiation tool in these kind of matters. He communicated that peace can only come with a sense of power too. So everything, like Krishna was trying to tell Arjuna that day, if you look at it, it's so powerful way of communicating. So I try to bring that after describing leadership in section 1. The section 2, I get into personal qualities, where I also talk of communicating to lead. What are the personal qualities of somebody, which is chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita talks of the Daivic qualities. And I try to describe it.
Yes.
And that chapter itself, I also talk about how leadership begins with the journey of purpose. And what you were referring to, the Prime Minister, as a 6-year-old child, 6 or 7-year-old child, the incident that happens in his village, a cow dying, and then in the family in which a child had just passed away, and child Modi asked his father, and typically like any father, possibly most of us don't know the answers, but we will tell something to our children, said that maybe it's a way of cow is grieving for the family. And it struck this young child's mind and said, if an animal can grieve so deeply for human grief, how deeper should I be concerned about human grief? How much should I be concerned about their misery? So what should I do to ameliorate it? So that save, we call it crucible movement in leadership language. I think that was his crucible movement. And throughout, that theme follows his life. Even in one of the places I described, the Antyodaya, how beautifully it manifests. We all talk of schemes as just numbers and programs, right? In government, we become used to these numbers. But for him, it's not a number. Like when Vishwakarma program was launched, it's conviction and not number.
Yes.
So he was not satisfied with the presentations made to him how the program should happen. And one day he just called the CEO of Niti Aayog. And you should remember, he is, as a politician, he's got a dharma to play. He's got a role to play. He's finished his campaign for Karnataka, 22 hours of work, he comes back. Meets Niti Aayog CEO. Next 1 hour, sits with him and explains to him what does he want from the Vishwakarma scheme. And it's so beautiful. It's again a class in microeconomics to why the last man matters. His explanation was very simple. He said, today, the reality of the world today, the real growth story that all of us subscribe to, whether we like it or not, the papa mama stores, the small shops are all going to disappear. The larger things are going to gobble it up. But he said every village, he said when I was growing up, he called them Baswayas. They were called Baswayas in his native tongue there. Professions which were self-sufficient, contributed to the local economy of the village, but they depended on the village. It's interdependent economies in a microcluster. And he said they are disappearing. He said today maybe there are 5 or 6 of these professions, self-employable professions in a local economic context. He said, I want to identify such people, give them a platform, give them the capital access and augment their skills, tie them up to existing markets, provide that leverage and handholding support, that protection of the state for that. And maybe they can team up with the largest structures, just plug into that economic model.
Fantastic.
And he said, such people exist in every village. Maybe there are only 5 or 6 now, not the 18 that I know of. There might have been more in some places. Find those people out. For those people, they should be part of this growth story. Now, that is the real inclusive development all of us should think about. Inclusive to the last man, that comes because of his experience.
And he's always connecting to his roots.
Yes.
He's never disconnected, as you rightly also point out. That
That's his strength.
That is his strength. He's completely. So when I think when he's talking about, as you said, after the 22 hours journey, campaign, coming back, saying what he wants, he's reconnecting to that.
And he does this repeatedly. Everything. And once I even asked him, I have not written a lot of this in this book because it has been the construct of the book.
Yes.
So one day I asked him, how does he decide? The Balalkot incident had happened. I said, okay, everybody only looks at actions he takes and it looks very courageous and bold and the planes go in, but it's such a big decision. It's not easy. He has to live with the decision all his life, right? It's very, very, very demanding. We can't even decide which coffee to order in a shop. But look at the gravity of the decision that he's taking. So I said, how does he decide? And where does the decision making come from? Because these are things we need to study to see if we can imitate it or make it a more teachable model. And he was very matter of factly. He said, I have a very simple way. Agar desh ko bala hoga to main decide karta. So it is all not about me or my power or my position. It's just that if it can do good to this country, I decide. And he gave me a very nice, I said, but how do you do it? He said, I'll give you an explanation. And he was very nice and I'll explain the whole story, how humorous he is actually. He said a very senior official from foreign government was visiting. And he had sort of one-to-one meeting. And you're in this space, so any one-to-one meeting, the whole MEA, everybody becomes nervous because they have to brief the Honorable PM, there'll be a storyline, a way of discussions, etc. that they prepared the Prime Minister for. And knowing our Prime Minister and his depth of knowledge of various things, he's got his own way of doing things. This man goes to meet him. He's also briefed. The senior functionary coming is also briefed by his government and our government also. He's meeting the Prime Minister.
Yes.
20-minute conversation. That man goes with an agenda to achieve. And finally, he concedes and says, Mr. Prime Minister, you are a master at this. I have to agree to whatever you have asked for. And I'm just saying yes to it and going. And he said, maybe my MEA was upset, maybe my FS is upset, everybody is upset. But what I spoke maybe made him out of script, but it was good for the nation. I asked him, how did he do that? He said, I don't know. But look at the humility of it. I said, you can't say that. You need to know how. Then he said, आप तो researcher है, आपका काम पता करना ही है, पता करके मुझे बता दीजिए. In this one humorous way. But I think, and I write about it,
Yes.
and it may sound today's world of scientific appreciation, because science is also a limited understanding to it. Let's accept it. But our scriptures are much more scientific. So it is that insights that come from, people call it intuition, etc. But I think the insights that come from plugging into that one space of oneness of super consciousness you can plug into. I think that's a spiritual evolution. That's where I talk of leadership being leadership to me is a spiritual journey, and the expression of spirituality also can be leadership. And I write in detail and I give it the ways of explaining it. For the West, I talk of Mihali's book Flow, and how you get into the flow, you plug into the consciousness. And I talk about Darshanic states,
Yes.
the way our scriptures describe it. I think the more any person, it's not just about him. Vivekananda says it so beautifully. He says, it's not magic or a miracle, he says. No, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, all of us can read. How many of us can practice it? Yama, Niyama, Asana, everything to that word, letter, the T and I, whatever you call it. I think it takes a lot of discipline. And that's something extraordinary in this person. The discipline to follow these practices, the sadhana that he does, in his own way, whether it's meditation, whether it's pranayama, whether it is yogasana, whether it is care for his body, the kind of food he eats. That is where he gets his energy from. And he has got his own way of explaining. I asked him this also, where do you get your energy from? I have not written that also here, but these are advantages of being an author. You can ask these questions. He laughed and said, a lot of people want to know this, he said. He said, then he explained it so beautifully. He said, I went to Chennai once, Anna University. He said, everybody knows Anna University, one of the largest universities of India. So they called me for the convocation. I went there, मुझे ऐसा लगा कि इतना बड़ा यूनिवर्सिटी है, लेकिन इस रूम में बहुत कम लोग बैठे हुए. Obviously, the security or other precautions would be there. So the vice chancellor explained to him, this hall, for all those considerations, and the hall size also, this is all we could do, sir. But others are sitting everywhere else and watching the proceedings. And again, these are things which people don't appreciate. He'll never disturb anything that's organized. The proceedings were not disturbed. He was happy. He completed the function. And after the convocation was over, he told the vice chancellor, I would still like to meet other children in other places.
Yes.
Everybody is in a TC, right? From the SPG to everybody will be in it. But he goes, sits on a bench, puts a stool, stands on a stool in different classrooms. And he was, again, his humorous self. He said, for an observer, it looked as though I'm trying to be showing off. For a media person, they'll say, oh, a vote ke liye kar raha hai. Chennai elections were due at that time. He said, I know here these people are not going to vote me anyway. So it's not elections. Nobody understands that my energy, I'm 72 at the time of the age that he went in. I need to get energy. And where else can you get energy other than the enormous reservoir of youthful energy from these people? So getting the pulse of the people, getting their stories, their visions, then it gives me a purpose in life. I have to help them fulfill it. It's my job, and that's where I draw my energy from. So that's his explanation. My energy comes from opportunities to serve.
Fantastic.
And I think that's so powerful.
And he does that consistently.
And because he believes in it. No, it's not just words for him.
Yes, I mean, even the exam warrior, Pariksha Pe Charcha.
The way he talks so, he knows it's conviction for him. It's not just words. And that's what is, look at his Man Ki Baats. None of it I have analyzed. I have tried to find out something which can be called political. They are prime ministerial. They are not political.
Nothing. No element.
That is an element of. It's like an elder grandfather talking, somebody guiding. It's positive. It always recognizes so many other people, unseen, unsung heroes of the country.
Yes, absolutely.
Where you are bringing out their achievements and surfacing it up, so others can also emulate. And it's a direct way of the leader of the nation getting people to engage in policy. Otherwise, policy making and policy engagement is seen as a specialization. A select elite few only can do that. No, for even people like me who's gone deep into policy, living deep down in the forests of the south, we thought policy to Delhi wale ke liye. No, it's captured by people in Delhi. For that, to deconstruct that and communicate it to an ordinary citizen and tell them what he is doing and tell them how things are happening in this country and what are the strategies ahead, what is the vision that we need to have, it is special.
And to do it in a country of
And
India's magnitude and
continuously,
variety and continuously.
right? And it's always different state, different examples, different stories to learn, different lessons for each one of us. So it's just analyzing his Man Ki Baat was a learning.
So I have one, the Jan Bhagidari. You use this term. I'm just paraphrasing, but your sentence is so beautifully articulated that we were a dependent or a depender mindset, and from that he shifted it to a stakeholder participative abundance mindset. Can you please speak about that? And then I would be very interested to to know your analysis through this book, a bit of the COVID period and also the abrogation of 370. And I've seen that you have also, anyone who reads your book realizes that you have talked to a number of people who have actually worked with him. And you've got some very interesting insights. The way he conducts meetings, the way he takes reviews, the way there are targets and timelines are set. It's very interesting, fascinating, the way he gets into details.
And there's a time for everybody.
And he has a time for everybody. And he doesn't, there's no
He's
question.
never hurried.
He's never hurried. I mean, I remember when we went to present him with the Modi doctrine, it was that, usual 5 minutes. So it went on to about 25 minutes. And then he just listened to us. And I was explaining to him the book. It was as if, it was the first time that he was listening something to that kind.
He's 100% into the conversation.
Focused. And there were 3 slips which came, but no hurry, I mean, normally if something comes like we are, okay, theek hai, namaste, phir mil, no hurry.
And you'd have met the other 3 also.
And he would have met the other 3. I remember the last time I had that close interaction was during the election campaign in West Bengal. A very tough seat where I was contesting. Grueling summer, just during this period, towards the end of May, grueling summer, it had rained heavily a few days, a cyclonic rain. And in that crowd, he came onto the stage and I was there profusely sweating and all that. He sat beside me. And he said, I believe till yesterday, last night, it was all muggy, it was all muck here, and it's very nice the way you have done it. Just that word. I mean, he need not have
detail.
Eye for detail. So, it would be very interesting to, yes.
See, I didn't complete it. The first section, like I said, generally about leadership, section
Yes.
2 about his understanding the self.
Yes.
I define leadership as understanding the self, understanding others around me, and the actions that bind the self to the other. That's the context in which leadership operates.
Yes.
So first chapter I described this Bharatiya version of leadership.
Yes.
Second section is the personal qualities, understanding him,
Exactly.
understanding himself.
Exactly.
Third, the manifestation of his as public leadership action.
Yes.
Right? There I also write about the context of adaptive leadership. How beautifully I frame it as adaptive leadership and the focus, that's where I describe Kashmir.
Exactly.
And then I explain, I take it to global leadership, and the epilogue, I end it as Dharma of legacy and the legacy of Dharma.
Yes. Yes.
And how,
very interesting.
yeah, how his legacy can actually help make this world a better place. His legacy of leadership, that's the context I speak. So COVID also, if you look at it, when he calls the first meeting, look at his visioning and his ability to see how we should be prepared. And we can see that even in this war preparation, the way the nation was prepared, right? And the way they were actually got to be prepared also. In COVID, what happened? It was only just in China at that time, first meeting, and I then held Mansukh Mandaviya ji, whom I had also interviewed, and the meeting
Yes.
he described. Jitendra Singh ji described
Yes.
it to me, the meeting. So they were in the meeting, and so he was, these people didn't even know. And Dr. Jitendra Singh is also a doctor. And for them, it's just for him, COVID was a word somewhere, but he was, Prime Minister knew so much about it, and he was talking about it and said, we should be prepared. And what should we be doing? And what are the things to do? And to create a sense of urgency without panic. That's the beauty of his leadership. Preparedness of all the ministries, and look at it. whatever anybody might say. Now, looking back, a post-mortem analysis, a public health, I'm also a public health specialist, and public health management perspective, India was the finest public health management of COVID. Right? A lot of people have written about it now. The integration of the state, Samaj Sarkar Bazaar, that's what he calls it, civil society rising up to the occasion. Yes, we had a problem. Migrants had a challenge. But the way we immediately responded and managed it.
Yes.
See, problems will arise. The state's response to it, and this is a federal country. Each state has got its own health understanding. But to drive it from nationally, each minister given responsibilities, each officer given responsibilities, every district being overseen and managed, to know that we protect the people of the country. And the kind of food grains we supported, even today, close to 70 to 80% of people get food grains, right? Which are the countries provided that kind of food security to the nation in real sense? Huge distribution, the bank transfers that happened, the farmers' welfare being addressed. It was a package. And infrastructure getting stimulated I'm talking of post-COVID. So not just the COVID, the response to the epidemic and the virus, the pandemic, and then the post-COVID response, our economic stability even today, whatever some armchair economists might argue, the reality is seen by us, right? We have shown what India can be, a growing story. Even with if we had not lost the 2-3 years, we would have possibly grown faster. I would look at the counterfactual. What if that had not happened to us? The way we have managed it. So his ability to see afar, much more than us, his ability to understand why India needs a bullet train between Ahmedabad and Bombay, not just as one example, but as a learning story to put it to the next 10,000 kilometers of it. Now, it may take 20 years more, but that ability to see there. Today, the kind of highways we are constructing, in all spaces, the ports that we have today, the Udan program, let's not even go too far.
Exactly.
When he spoke about it, we thought, what is this? They're subsidizing air travel. Today, every Indian citizen is flying virtually. Every flight you go to is always full. It has become a regular routine mode of transportation. That's what it's supposed to be. Why should it be a access only to privileged few who can afford it? Today it's being made affordable. The facilities that you provide in an airport, facilities you provide in a railway station which can be as good as an airport. This kind of a vision which we never thought is possible in this country, we are on the track. So whether it's infrastructure, whether it is COVID, every space you can think about, whether it's women-led leadership. For many, it could have just been a slogan.
Yes.
But look at it. It's not just us women officers and soldiers walking in Republic Day parades. They actually are in the forefront of our, not just forces, everywhere. Science, look at our ISRO missions. Look at the space economy today. How many of us believe that when he spoke about it,
yes,
it's like an idea. But today, there are close to 250 startups just in the space sector in a span of 2 years. Whether it is the green hydrogen that we're talking about, the Middle Eastern corridor that we're talking about, or we're talking about quantum computing today. Look at the way semiconductors are coming up actually. It's not just a cabinet decision. Look at the way it's happening. A few days ago, the cabinet announced the setting up in Uttar Pradesh.
Uttar Pradesh, yes.
So it is, and look at the way it's planned across the country, not just one state. Like it's across the country. It could be from the south to Assam to everywhere else. Today the fabs are coming up. So I think this kind of vision, and we were nowhere in semiconductors, right? Today we are going to possibly take some time for us to get there. And I am very confident we'll have our own AI models in another 3 to 6 months, the way our people are working on it. So this visioning, so this ability to put it, and specifically on the Kashmir issue.
Yes.
For most people, abrogation is a big thing. But I don't think abrogation is a big thing, right? Look at it's not a one-day event that happened. It is a build-up from the time you are associated as a pracharak, the time he hoisted the national flag in Lal Chowk, to the time that he's been the Prime Minister. It's a constant raising of the heat and building the pressure. And after all this, the Chief Secretary, who's currently the CEO of Niti Aayog, his mandate given to him was very simple. He said, our job is to bring development to Kashmir. Our job is to restore democracy in Kashmir. He gave him his mandate and said, your job is to deliver to the citizens of Kashmir, that they're citizens of India, and we'll take care of them. Development, democracy, all that should go back to people as quickly as possible. So his vision was clear. It was not abrogation. It is the rightful place that the state should get in the larger scheme of the nation, and that's why it should be. You can't have two flags, two prime ministers, two nation theory. It is just one nation. Ekta is a principle, and they should get the benefit of all this. I think that's something, and the way he did it, clear focus, all stakeholders being kept in mind, also making sure that the people, they select 100 families which are exploiting the situation
Yes.
and benefiting by the status quo. Making sure that panchayat elections democratized it so beautifully. Everybody is now able to access to be a politician today, which never happened. They even brought in those changes in the act, and panchayat raj was brought in a very serious way. Elections were held. People stood for elections. The real test of his convictions was, it is not that his party came to power there, right? Elections were held, a party came to power, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And that is exactly his conviction in democracy. It's not my party should win.
Yes.
There's nothing, no slogan like that. People should win is what he kept saying. Everything was working all right until this recent disruption, because one, the economic growth, look at it. Has ever a protest happened the way it happened after the Pahalgam incident? To me, that's a natural response of people who are united back with the country. Their hearts also bled for this country. And that's why they said enough is enough. And I think the way he did it is what I described, that adaptiveness of his leadership, and the way he made sure all the stakeholders' concerns were addressed, but not losing sight of the work at the center, and he not being at the center. That's a beauty. It's not about him. It's about Kashmir and their development. And that is the narrative here, a larger purpose. Abrogation was an instrument, a medium to reach the larger purpose. But most people, that would have been the end. But for him, it was just a means.
And it was the beginning, actually,
Yes.
for that NAM.
And today, look at it.
Yes, for the new
Look at
vision.
the state, how
Yes.
it's growing.
Yes.
Even which country in the world, to look at this, describe it, it might look like I'm just talking in an adulatory manner, but I'm giving you evidence with which 60 to 65% of the people went to elections last year, right?
Exactly. And such a high voter turnout.
Yeah. And
Unprecedented
across the
voter-
world,
yes.
has a single person standing for election anywhere else except India. Did the person come out and say, my vision? Most politicians think of the short term. I have to win these elections. Right? That's not wrong. That's how the systems are everywhere in the world. With a 4-year term or a 5-year term, you only think of what I can deliver in 4 years, or what I can deliver in 5 years, which makes sense to the electorate. But here is a man who not only spoke that language, I in fact write about it, the ability to combine short-termism with long-termism.
Yes.
Very rare in people. He didn't lose sight of Vikasit Bharat. 2047 is my dream. The whole country, all of us work to contribute little by little. People sent in their opinions to Niti Aayog. Every citizen felt involved. Many of them represented that engagement by sending in their opinions, aggregation, and the document emerged. A strategic plan. That strategic thinking with that immediate operational necessity of winning an election. You have to ensure that people get rations, people get houses, people get electricity, or whatever promises have to be committed in a political economy to win an election. At the same time, if you don't win an election, how can you be a statesman and deliver the long term? So this is the balance that he is perfect at. And what really stood out to me, if I were to say what are the 3 or 4 things that stands out,
Yes, that is very important.
the Sthita Pragnate. Even during this recent incidents of the last,
Unflappable, absolutely.
the equipoise he demonstrates, that Sthita Pragnate that Bhagavad Gita describes of, unaffected by the extremes, binaries of life. That is his power. And his ability to give 100% anything. You have a conversation with him in that he's in the moment of time. I describe Eckhart Tolle's book
Eckhart
called
Tolle.
Power of Now.
Yes.
The power of now, I saw it in him. He's in that moment completely. We can't hold our thought in that moment of time for more than a few seconds. We get distracted. There are 100 things in our mind. He's the head of the nation with 1,000 things on his mind possibly. But in that moment, he's complete. You are presenting something to him, he'll be completely in that. We go make a presentation, it could be about some civil service issue or a public administration issue or a learning concern we are giving. Next, the principal scientific advisor may have a presentation on quantum computing. Third, his principal secretary may have some issues we discuss on an everyday basis. Everybody gets his 100%. He doesn't carry over the previous meeting to the next meeting. That is his, that's extraordinary.
Which I think fantastic. So
We have covered so much in the
yes, in fact, it just makes you feel that one should keep referring to this work, because
I do that. I learn a lot by referring to the
Yes,
book.
because I think there's a certain amount of timelessness in this work. It's not time bound.
I agree with you.
And as we see the next 4 years, his leadership unfold for the third term, uh, and I think even there he's creating history. Your book will be essential because these has all the reference points, the notes by which we can actually analyze and understand better. And very rightly for us, as you said, and that was one of the conditions that Prime Minister also gave you, was that India civilizationally has a rubric, has a framework, has a tradition of leadership. And so it has to be reversed now. That leadership, that framework needs to spread and not the other way only.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, you're taking this around the world, taking this book around the world, generating debate and discussion on it is also extremely important. And I wish that many more people keep reading this. I have made it a habit to keep presenting this book also and to discuss this whenever that is possible. There's a very interesting, sentence I want to end with from Nitin Noria's foreword to your book. He says, our Balasubramaniam's engaging new book on Narendra Modi's leadership reminds me of a passage from the Upanishads. You are what your deepest desire is. As is your desire, so is your intention. As is your intention, so is your will. As is your will, so is your deed. And as is your deed, so is your destiny. Modi's life is a fabulous illustration of this set of ideas. From his earliest days, his deepest desire was to lead India and help it realize its immense potential as a nation. Extremely grateful to you, for bringing this out so fascinatingly and in such a variety and multitude of ways, and so aptly put. One cannot, I think one of the hallmarks of a good book is also that you want to underline every line practically. So in every paragraph that you have, one wants to underline lines and to remember. So thank you very much.
In a sense, this book is not just about public leadership.
Yes.
Now, corporate leaders have told me they learn a lot. Students have told me it's very useful.
Absolutely.
Policymakers and political leaders have told me it's. So I think, in a sense, the leadership message of Bharat is so universal that all of us can carry our lessons, apply it in our life. But more importantly, I would like to end with saying, answering a question which you never asked, but we have discussed this in the past. Why did I call it Power Within?
Yes, exactly.
It is again a story by itself. Part of my literature review and research, Archie Brown's book on the myth of strong leadership.
Yes.
And he had analyzed 5 leaders, all the global north, saying that powerful leaders is a myth. And here we are in a civilizational context where we are all leaders in our own understanding of power. It is Mahatma Gandhi to Acharya Vinoba Bhave to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel to Prime Minister Modi. I was not convinced. So I was still struggling to reconcile what is this research talking about. And it struck me that a Western understanding of power is driven by authority, power over somebody.
Yes.
Whereas Swami Vivekananda so beautifully describes this. For India, it's not power over somebody. It is ability to conquer external nature as much as the ability, the conquest of internal nature, the power within ourselves. He said that power within can only happen through Niswartha Seva, Vivekananda says. And what we see in Prime Minister Modi is that enormous ability, that power within, that's manifesting externally as public good. And I think for each one of us, there's that hidden potential, the power within us. And the more we are able to manifest it, I think that is the way to take this nation to the rightful place it belongs to. And so to me, this is a book, for me itself is a guide.
Yes.
So how do I keep reminding myself that I need to really activate that power within and enable it to manifest in the service of the nation?
I think that's so beautifully put, because when you talk about the power within and you refer to Swami Vivekananda's core essential vision of life, and that very simple sentence that Prime Minister Modi gave in answer to your question, he said, I decide whatever is good for India, I do. I think that comes from that realization of that power within. And that is what Swami Vivekananda's entire action was all about. So I'm really extremely grateful for
Thank
to
you for having
for
me here.
giving us such a wonderful book. I urge everyone, all of you, to please read, to disseminate its ideas, to discuss, and I look forward to engaging with this book with you all across the country as we have been doing in the past. Thank you so much for giving us time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.